He's an actor, an activist, an author, a musician with a story that now spans 5 decades. He's got over 100 films, a few hit records, and a whole lot of soul. My man Corey with a brand new single. Corey Feldman, the new single is called Characters. He's definitely one of those. I'm sure you've seen him as a character in one of your favorite movies. Thanks for coming on, Corey. What's up, bro? Good looking good.
What's up? Is it Gentry? Is that right?
Gentry, yeah.
Yeah.
Some would say it's elementary, but I am Gentry.
I like it. So have you heard the song yet?
I did listen to the song. I'm curious about this 8-piece orchestra, also the 3D audio experience. You really, to me, you went on a whole nother level with this song from what you've done in the past.
Well, absolutely. And we haven't done this, it's not all done yet because we haven't released the Dolby Atmos version. It's on its way. We've also got an incredible, technologically advanced music video using AI, which I'm usually pretty against. But there's a lot of great stuff on the way. And this is all just the tip of the iceberg because it's the lead for an EP of this style that is, I guess you would say, heavily influenced by the Beatles. So yes, that's the deal.
Well, the last time I had you on, I remember you mentioned you performed on stage with Ringo. So you've actually performed on stage with a Beatle, if what you told me in the last show was true. Is that true? What happened that night?
I've actually performed on stage with a Beatle and a half.
Oh, seriously?
Because I did a dual headlining concert with Billy Preston back in, I think, 2000. Maybe in the 90s. It was like 94, 95. Anyway, so yeah, Billy Preston and I did, co-headlining at this festival, and we ended up sharing the stage together at the end of the night, and we actually sang Get Back and Jumpin' Jack Flash together. So yes, that was my half a Beatle, because he was considered as the 5th Beatle by many. And then, of course, performing Get By With a Little Help with My Friends with Ringo. And that was at the Greek Theater here in Los Angeles, which was very exciting. But in addition to that, I've had the pleasure of meeting Paul several times. I've met both of John's sons. I've been, knowing Sean since he was very little, and Julian and I met all the way back in the 80s, and we run into each other, here and there throughout the years. I met Yoko quite briefly.
Some would say she broke up the band. I know a lot of big Beatles fans say that it all went down at that point. That's not true?
No, listen, 8 years is a long time to spend every day with somebody, and especially for somebody's, things happen, people grow and they grow their separate ways, but it was strictly financial. And if you really know anything about the breakup of the Beatles, it all came down to, business management and finances and stuff like that, as it always is. It always comes down to credits and income when it comes to bands breaking up, because egos get big, or things get complicated business wise. But that said, I also believe that the Beatles absolutely would have gotten back together had John not gotten assassinated in 1980.
And as you've studied this band and hung out with Sir Paul McCartney, what did you learn about the way that they work now that you're in the studio? Is there something that you took from this band in the way they performed and the way that they handled their work?
Everything.
Like name something specifically.
Well, first of all, looking for creative solutions to problems in the studio, or looking for new sounds or exploring new ways of doing things. It's all about finding creativity in any way that you can and expanding your horizons by expanding your mind in, trying new things, trying different things, getting different sounds out of different instruments or with different, these days you do it with plugins, but, back in the old days, we used to take I remember working on my first Truth Movement album, and my band Truth Movement is basically as Characters is to the Beatles and my new EP is to the Beatles, the Truth Movement was to Pink Floyd. And so we were trying all sorts of different things and experimenting to get different sounds during that process. Both of those albums, we did 2 Truth Movement albums. And I remember the very first one, we did something where we took like an old metal filing cabinet, because we wanted a particular sound on the microphone and we couldn't get my voice to sound a certain way. So we took a pig nose amplifier, which are these little tiny amplifiers, and we stuck it in the file cabinet, a metal file cabinet, and then we took a mic and we dropped it in there, and then we closed the door. and it gave this great, kind of hollowed out but echoey effect at the same time, which is something, you wouldn't be able to capture any other way. But these days they probably have a plug-in for it, but in those days they didn't. So you actually had to try things.
They had to get very creative back in those days. The last time I spoke to you, you were about to go on tour with Fred Durst, and they say that performers really level up when you're on stage night after night after night. Do you feel like you got better vocally? You got better on the guitar? What was something that you improved upon? Because you did a lot of shows last summer.
I mean, all of it. Listen, every tour you try to grow, you try to improve, and I definitely think that the quality keeps getting better and better as, the music gets better, the quality of the writing gets better, the quality of the production gets better. I mean, as you grow, you learn, I mean, listen, a doctor, a surgeon, they're only going to get better with time. And no matter what field I think that you're in, the harder you work at it. 50 years is a pretty long time to be entertaining people. And, music's been part of it the whole time. People don't realize.
Yeah, you told me your mom would make you sing for your audition. So you're actually a singer first. I remember you told me that.
That's right. And not only that, but I've been writing since I was 11. So, at 11 years old, I started writing parodies, actually, emulating Weird Al and looking at how he put the phrasing and how he laid things out lyrically in the same exact disposition as the lyrical content of the original artist. And so in doing so, it showed me timing, it showed me rhythm, it showed me structure. And that's how I started writing my first songs, leading to my first, I guess you would call single at 14, even though I never released it until 2022. But I wrote it at 14 and it was called Runaway. And that became part of my box set. And we even shot a video for it in my dad's apartment when I was 15 years old. So, yeah, it's always been there.
Well, you've crossed paths, I know, with so many legends in entertainment, and so many have influenced you. But this story, I got to hear more about this. You told me a snippet of it the last time we talked, but I want to hear the whole story. B.B. King. It wasn't anything. It wasn't anything to do about music, but you said to me that B.B. King helped you to quit smoking. Can you tell that story? How did B.B. King help you to quit on the smokes?
Okay, so what happened was I went to see BB. My security at the time had been very close with him, and he told him that I wanted to come down, and BB knew who I was, and he was a fan. So I walked into his dressing room before the show. Obviously he's just, a legend, great guy, very nice. And he saw that I had a pack of cigarettes in my pocket. And he said, wow, that brings me back. And I said, what do you mean? He says, I smoked for 35 years. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, I guess you don't smoke anymore. He said, absolutely not. I said, so you quit? He said, yes. I said, amazing. I said, how did you do it? Because, if it was 35 years, I'm imagining, he was like 80 at this time. I imagine you quit, a while back. It was like quit in like 1956 or something like that. I don't know, like way back 66, I don't know, somewhere in there. He's like, yeah, so it's been a long time since I've had a cigarette. He said, but, it's funny because the way I did it is it was very much like that. I used to keep a pack rolled up, and he showed me his sleeve. And he said, I used to keep a pack rolled up in my sleeve right here. So it was close to my heart. So I always knew that I had it and I was safe. And, that was like my security blanket. Was, you freak out if you don't have your cigarettes, but you had it here. You knew you were safe. He said, so I thought when I wanted to quit, I thought, man, how am I going to get past that? I'm so used to having that security blanket. So he said, what I did, the day I decided to quit, I looked at that pack of cigarettes. I bought a brand new pack, never opened them. And I looked at that pack of cigarettes and I said, you know what? This is my security blanket. I got them if I ever need them, but I don't need them anymore. So every day I'm going to wake up, I'm going to put that pack right here where I'm used to having it, and I'm not going to smoke it. And that was a true test of my willpower. And so that seed that he planted in my brain actually stuck, because when I did finally quit, I had a full pack of cigarettes that I had just bought that was left sitting on my nightstand, and I put it away in my drawer. And I knew that it was in the drawer right next to my bed. And if I needed to break it for some reason, they would be there. But I remembered always what BB had told me, like, it's good to have them there to tempt yourself, but also to know that you don't need them.
So this guy,
And
you've learned so much from so many artists, even how to quit smoking. And speaking of
that's right.
smoking the cigs, I remember as a kid watching Stand By Me, and you looked very comfortable smoking those cigarettes. Was that movie magic, or were those real smokes that they were making you kids smoke?
No, they were actually herbal cigarettes. And I don't mean weed, but actually herbal cigarettes. It was like an herbal type of tobacco that, wasn't hazardous for your health or whatever. And that's what they gave us, and they taught us how to smoke them.
Do you think that maybe triggered your smoking that?
No,
Did you enjoy smoking that, or you hated it?
No, I didn't like it at all. And it had nothing to do with me smoking. In fact, I didn't smoke another cigarette until I was 18 years old. I did chew tobacco briefly at 14, which that might have been something to do with it, because I came back from the set and I said, "Oh man, we were smoking fake cigarettes." And I think it was my cousin said, "Well, you can chew tobacco and it tastes good and you get the same effect." I said, "Really?" So I remember me and all my little kid friends at that time started taking chew and putting it in our lip, and that lasted for about 6 months until I think it was Halloween night when we were running around from house to house, chewing on stuff, swallowing it, eating candy, whatever. And man, we all got so sick, we were puking our brains out, and that was the end of that. And now until this day, the smell of chew just grosses me out. And the same thing happened with cigars, by the way. But with cigarettes, I didn't try cigarettes until I was about 17 or 18, actual cigarettes. And that was because I was dating an older woman. And the older woman said, "Have you ever tried a cigarette after sex?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, that's how you smoke. You smoke when it's after sex because it feels so good." And I thought, well, I mean, she's hot and she's probably had her experiences, so she must know what she's talking about. So I tried it. And although it wasn't any great revelation, I definitely got a head buzz from it. And that was enough to get me hooked.
Yeah, and you got a little head. Yeah, it sounds like you got a little head and a head buzz. Hey, now. Nice. But
the head buzz eventually goes away, and you're just stuck with the results, which is you're now addicted to this terrible poisonous thing, which lasted about 30 years in my life, 25. And then here's the other part of me quitting was I lived next to a heart surgeon. I was outside my house smoking one day in the 90s, and this guy stops and he goes, "How old are you?" I said, 21, 22, I don't know. And he goes, "Okay, well, you're all right then. You can keep smoking." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Well, I'm a heart surgeon, so you're fine. You can smoke now." And I go, "Oh, well, that's good to know." I said, "What does that mean though?" And he said, "Well, it means that you got to quit by 35, 40 at the latest." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because it takes half the time to recover from the amount of time that you smoke. So if you smoke for 10 years, you need 10 years to quit smoking for yourself to fully recover. And if you smoke for 30 years, it means you need 30 years to recover. So if you quit by, let's say you start at 20 and you quit by 40, that's 20 years. That means you need 20 years of not smoking to fully
It's a lot
recover.
of math, kids. You should just stay away from the smokes is probably what you should do, especially if you want to be a singer like my man Corey Feldman, who's got a brand new single out called Characters. Stream it wherever you listen to your music. And I love the album art. I also want to talk to you because a lot of fans love Goonies. One time I brought up some of these old memories and you kind of didn't want to talk about them. You were like, they're so long ago, I don't really want to talk about them. But I thought it was great to see you went back to Astoria. 40 years has now gone by. Oh. Is it still a burnout to talk about these things, or did that kind of rekindle it? And what's really happening? Is there a Goonies 2 coming? Break it down for us.
Well, I went back for the 40th anniversary to be a part of, there was a documentary that I helped a little bit make, which I can't talk about right now, but it has to do with the refurbishment of the house. So there's that. But there's the big sequel, which is definitely in the works at Warner Brothers. Absolutely. Steven Spielberg announced it. Amblin Productions is behind it. And Chris Columbus, the original writer, is helping to write and produce it. So it's definitely happening. That's all I know at this time, because we have not seen a script and we have not seen an offer. And we don't know if we're going to be a part of it. None of the cast does. I mean, nobody's been sent a script. Nobody's been sent an offer. and it's all a mystery to us. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, if it's a great script and we can all figure it out, then we'll be a part of it. But if not, then we wish them luck.
All right, man. Well, I'm excited. I hope they give you the call and give you guys all a role. It was great seeing you on the Today Show and doing the press tour. It was great seeing all you guys. Another question I want to ask you. I remember you telling me that you watched Michael Jackson work in the studio to get back to the music. What did you see him do in those moments that really stuck with you? Because you said you've watched him work and perform, obviously. You performed with him on stage. But in the studio, what is Michael Jackson like in the studio?
Well, let me back that up. I never performed live with him on the stage. I performed in a video with him.
Okay.
I was in his video, Liberian Girl. They did ask me to dance in the video, which I didn't do because I was kind of embarrassed. I was very young, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. But that said, he was a fascinating man, and of course, every minute that I got to spend with him, I was studying him like a microscope, and. I got to spend time. Actually, ironically, I was in the studio the day that he recorded Liberian Girl. So I remember being there, we'd be in mid-conversation, and then like all of a sudden he'd just stop and he'd freeze and he'd listen intently. And then he'd run back into the control room and give notes and then come back and finish the conversation. So I learned from that, just from that moment, how important it is to listen to every detail of each song that you're doing, because each song is that important. And little technical things that I would ask, like things that people probably wouldn't think of, but I would say, is it easier to sing on an empty stomach or a full stomach? And he would say, always the best to sing on an empty stomach, things like that. So down to hand claps and finger snaps, which is, part of the acoustic thing that you do when you're working on a song in the studio, or beatboxing, or, rhythm, or dancing together. There's so many different things that we did together, in our time. It was a beautiful experience to have an inspiration like that for sure.
Corey Feldman proving once again that we're all just characters, and he's doing his best at hitting his marks and making sure he gets those lines just right. So go stream the new single, Characters, and keep making those hooks, my brother. Peace, love, and happiness, and thanks for coming on the show, bro.
Bye, Gentry. Thank you.